So welcome to our workshop. My name is Nádia. I'm Portuguese. We are also going to have Thomas. Maybe Thomas, if you already want to come to this side of the screen, and also remember the microphone is here. So I am Portuguese. We started with Jesmonite in the end of 2020, officially launched our business in 2021. As my quote says, I thought I was zero creative. I couldn't do anything like DIY, manual work. I was like really bad at it. So if I can learn Jesmonite and if I can master it, everyone can. So that's what I think. Besides that, we do this. This is a side job for us. So we have full-time jobs as software developers, both of us. And well, I'm really happy to have you here on the workshop. I hope you learn a lot. And feel free to ask any questions. I will get into that a little bit later.
Yeah, so I'm Thomas. Nice to meet you all. As Nadia mentioned, we found this material back in 2020. So we actually picked up a lot of tips and tricks along the way, and also discovered a lot through our own failures. So yeah, we hope to teach you a lot about that today. And yeah, I'm a software developer by day, and by night and in the weekends, we spend our time on Razu Studio.
Okay, and what are we going to explain today? What are the things we're going to talk about? So the introduction, as we did now, we are going to also give you an idea of what materials we use, besides Jesmonite, obviously, what materials we use. I have a lot of things here to show you. Things that make it easier to work with Jesmonite, also along with a few tips and tricks. We're also going to talk about the calculations. I know calculations are a little bit of a pain for everyone. We're going to talk about how to color Jesmonite, how to achieve the same colors. We're also going to make a product. It's actually not going to, there is a typo. It's not going to be a terrazzo product, but I will explain you if it was terrazzo, how will we do it. So we're going to do, I have here a silicone mold. We're actually going to do a product that we designed it ourselves. So we made the silicone mold ourselves. So I'm going to show you that. We're going to go through all the stages. So like the making, the sanding, the sealing, packaging, and of course, questions. But we don't need to wait until the end to have these questions. Anytime that you want to ask any questions, you can type it on the chat, or you can stop me and ask the question, no problem. So you don't wait until the end, or if you prefer to, it's also fine. But feel free to ask any questions. You are here to learn and to ask all the questions that you want. So that's what we're going to do. Now, I'm going to start by letting you know a little bit about the materials. So let me just here change this also so you can see me better. I think like this you might be good. So what do we use? Well, obviously we use the Jesmonite AC100, right? This is what we're going to explain. But if you don't have Jesmonite AC100, these tips, so if you have other brands, and this is also a good point, is that will you happen to get to about info about making your own silicone mold? We can give you a few tips, yes. We actually have our Jesmonite guide where we have, for example, what shore, because silicone needs to have a shore that you can buy, but we can also explain you a little bit of that. Maybe we can take that question in the end with the general questions. So maybe Thomas, you can, I don't know if I know by heart, but I think it's 25, but I can explain a little bit of our process. I will do that. What do we use? Well, we use silicone a lot. Like these silicone cups are super helpful to make Jesmonite, because what is going to happen is the Jesmonite, whenever you're done with making it, you can let it dry. And then when you squish it, you are just going to have leftovers of Jesmonite. So it's also going to be easier to clean. It's going to be also better for leftovers. So you're going to have less waste because you can reuse all the leftovers. So everything that is silicone, and we like to use a lot of kitchen stuff. So this is our spatulas to bake cakes. We use the silicone cups, silicone spatulas, silicone mats. This makes it a world of difference because it's easier to clean and also reduces the waste. Now, another thing that you for sure need to have is a scale. So this is a super important thing because you want to be as precise as possible. It doesn't have to be that you need, if it's like 0.11, that you need to do 0.11. But it's better to be precise because some of the ratios that you're using, or because of pigments or because of the material itself, it's better to be precise than just doing by eye. If you have a lot of experience, you can do it by eye at some point, but I would, even as we use a scale, like it's one of the most, if we don't have a scale, we're not going to make a product because it's very difficult to obtain the right quantities. More things. Okay, drill attachments. So this, I'm going to show you a few. So we use this together with a drill. So it's an attachment for these drills. And this is going to help us mix the Jesmonite way quicker than if you do it by hand. If you don't want to spend your money on drill attachments, some people even use like the kitchen blenders. So you can use something like this, but doing it by hand, especially if you're doing like really big quantities, it's going to take you forever, and it's going to be hard to not have any powder clumps. So we really like our drill attachments. And let me give you some examples. This is the biggest one of Jesmonite, and it's extremely big. So for example, it doesn't even fit on these cups. This we recommend if you are doing quantities like 5 kilos of Jesmonite. So that's when you need something like this. This is the biggest one. Then you have the smallest one of Jesmonite, which is like this. And this one's already fit these cups. But for example, it won't fit a middle size. This we use when we're also doing some quantities like from 500 grams to 2, 3, 4 kilos. You can use something like this. But like I believe I mentioned this before, Jesmonite, it's actually a brand. It's not the type of material. So you can have different type of this composite from other brands. There is some like A1 acrylic. Maybe Thomas, you can write some of this. A1 acrylic, Aquacast. Do you remember some more? I think there is one on, it's on the one on US. I believe it's Aquacast.
It's plaster of Paris.
No, plaster of Paris is different from this type of materials. But what I want to say is that you can find different types of this kind of material. It doesn't have to be Jesmonite. We're focusing on Jesmonite because it's the one we work the most. But if you find other types, you can also use it. And one of the, I was going to bring this up because this is the smallest blade from another brand, the A1 acrylic, and it's really helpful because it's small enough that fits on these cups and even fits on smaller cups. Even like if you want to use yogurt cups, some people use this. This one is perfect because it can fit. And this is like the smallest size. You can see that is, well, it's full of Jesmonite, but you can see that is super small and it will also help you. Other things that we use. There is a trick that I'm not sure if everyone knows. So it's if you use isopropanol, this is going to help you burst bubbles. This is not to mix in the Jesmonite, so we're not going to mix it in the Jesmonite, but we are going to spray it. I will show you when I'm making the piece. I will show you this in more detail. So we normally put in this like in this how do you say, spray bottles, because what you want to do to burst the bubbles is that if you have your mix, you can just lightly spray like in 10 centimeters, like more or less like this, and it will burst these bubbles that are on the top. So this is a very cool trick, the isopropanol. Thomas already wrote it on the chat also. More things that we use. So retarder, it's also something that you can use. So this is the retarder for AC100. I will let you know the calculations, how much you can use in a little bit. But for example, we use this a lot in the summer months because what happens with the Jesmonite, it creates, when it's already setting on a mold, it creates a thermal reaction. And if the weather is very warm, this thermal reaction is going to be faster. So what is happening is that you're trying to mix your Jesmonite, and because the weather is warm, it's going to start setting faster. So you can use a little bit of retarder to have more time to use for this mix. And also, for example, we already made a table and the table was like 8 kilos, or, well, one of the tables was 8 kilos, the other one was 12. And we did use retarder because it's such a big silicone mold. You want to have time to properly mix it, properly remove the bubbles. So retarder, we really advise it for the warmer weather and also for bigger quantities. So if you are going to do Jesmonite, it's not mandatory, but it is a nice to have. I think I'm not sure if they have smaller bottles because this is quite a big one. But if you want to use it in these terms, then we also advise retarder. And let me see more things. Well, the pigments I'm going to talk about a little bit further in the workshop, and also a dental plate vibrator, which is a vibration table. I think you can see it. I will show you the dental plate vibrator. I think you cannot see it now, but well, Thomas made it. So it's this. So if you search on Google dental plate vibrator, you can find this kind of machines. And this is going to help to remove the bubble. So it vibrates here on the top. And because if you have your pour, you do like this. Or if you have your silicone mold, if it fits, you do like this. And the bubbles are going to rise to the surface. So it's also nice to have. But I will show you when I'm making the product itself. Let me put this here on the back. And these are the materials we are going to use. Now let me go back in sharing my screen for the calculations, which I know it's one of the pains for everyone. Okay, so let's move on to the calculations.